Hello, everyone. My name is Wayne Ganaway. Welcome to the History Center of Olmsted County. Thank you for being here this evening, and happy Historic Preservation Month. Isn't that great? Isn't that great to say that in Rochester, Minnesota? Yes. A few housekeeping notes. We will have time for Q&A after the presentation. And this is being broadcast and recorded on Zoom. So if you would like to watch it again, a link will be sent out, will be available to you of a recording of it through Zoom. Folks, we are a membership organization, and I know that we have members in the audience, both here and virtually. And if you enjoy presentations like this one, or the exhibit, or one of the many other exhibits that we have here, or if you enjoy seeing historic preservation, such as the George Stoppel Farmstead, everyone know what the George Stoppel Farmstead? Some of you have had it drummed in your heads, and it's only just the beginning, trust me. But in fact, if you're not a member, please consider becoming a member of the History Center of Olmsted County. Members get to vote at our annual meeting, and our annual meeting is tomorrow night. So you'll be able to exercise democracy right here. We also are going to be sharing some big news tomorrow. So really, it's going to be some big news shared by board members and myself tomorrow at the annual meeting. So please consider becoming a member. We couldn't be more pleased to partner with the Plummer House, both the management and the volunteers, in celebration of its centennial and the great restoration work being done on the water tower. I know most of you are probably local. I'm from the metropolis of Winona, and coming to Rochester was going to the big city, and there's two landmarks I remember. Everyone knows what the first one is, the corn cob, right? But it was really more intriguing was the water tower, and I just had no idea what its role was, and it's really fascinating, both architecturally and in terms of engineering. So I'm really looking forward to this. And the house itself is just a terrific house, both with its wonderful architecture, but also truly fun domestic technology. Just the amazing things that Dr. Plummer kind of innovated, or he used technology that was available to make the house more convenient, more usable for him and his work, but also for Daisy. It's very cool stuff that was going on in there. And if you haven't seen the exhibit yet, please check it out, and you can always come back and see it again. And if you're a member, it's free. I also want to thank, first of all, our staff. Ashley Evans is our events coordinator, rental coordinator, and has just been going nonstop. And the week's not over yet. Ashley knows that. So like I said, we have our annual meeting tomorrow, and that's going to be a really big show. And of course, Dan Nowakowski is our collections manager, and I want to thank Dan for all his work, but also working with the great team of the Plummer House volunteers and management. Les and Sandy, and especially Jane Beisel and Steve Williams, helped Dan. They were basically co-curators. They were a curating team that put together that fantastic exhibit. And it was a joy to work with them on the steering committee for the Plummer House Centennial Celebration. And don't forget that all of this is leading to the open house at the Plummer House on June 26th and the 29th. So we're going to have docents there, volunteer docents that will be able to answer questions. You'll be able to explore some of that technology, even go in the basement if some of you dare. I think it's pretty cool. That's the best part of the place, but some may differ. So don't forget about that. And I love the idea that the Plummer House is held in the public trust by the city of Rochester. And this is, I guess I didn't really realize it, but the grounds are actually a public park. That's right, isn't it? Yeah. That is such a wonderful asset to have a place like that is a park. And I mentioned this to Mike when he arrived this evening, that I think that the city and the Parks and Rec Department and the people of Rochester should be commended for their stewardship of that landmark. So it's really remarkable. So with that, one of our speakers probably needs no introduction. Been to city council meetings, and Mike Nigbur, that's how you pronounce it. Okay. Mike is director of Parks and Rec for the city. And he has been for 12 years, going on 12 years. Okay. And with the city even longer. And his department has managed the Plummer House since 1972. So that's a long tenure. In fact, we were mentioning that soon, if it hasn't already happened, the city will have owned the property longer than actually the Plummer family. And with every historic house, museum, or historic place, we hope that's the case, that the next owners actually own it longer than the original owners, especially if they're in the public interest. Bill Hickey is also going to be speaking tonight. He is a historical architect from Collaborative Design Group, which is located in St. Paul. Is that right? Minneapolis. Oh, okay, we'll give you that. He has done many projects at the Plummer House, but I am guessing that the water tower is the tallest. Okay. I don't know if it's the tallest of your whole portfolio, but and especially important for this project, which is funded in part by the National Park Service's Save America's Treasures program, is that Bill meets the Secretary of the Interior's standards for historical architect and architectural history. And that means that he knows his way around not only the historic structures, but also the rules and guidelines that are laid out to make sure that the work that is being done is respectful of the historical character and integrity of the buildings. So with that, I'm going to then introduce Bill and Mike, and I'll yield the floor to you.
Thank you, and good evening. Mike Nigbur, Rochester Park and Recreation. I've got a really short intro here for Bill, and that's kind of why we're here tonight, but I want to get up here and talk about a few things that are important to me, and kind of, you all are part of the city as well, and many of you perhaps had the same kind of history I had growing up, where you go to Quarry Hill and go to the historic cave, or go to Silver Lake Park and go to the stone bridges, or go to Chateau Theater growing up and see the movies out there and be awe and wonder of the facades on the inside there. These are things that kind of resonated with me growing up in that history side of things. I didn't get very far into college, and I decided I want to go into architecture. I'm not an architect, didn't quite make it as far as Bill did, but as part of that process, though, learning about the architectural history of buildings and the design process. I'm a land planner, so that design process and history is part of that process as well. These things kind of resonate with me going into my professional career with the city of Rochester, and even before that with design firms here in town. Part of the design firm process and city work that I've had done, especially coming into Park and Recreation 2011, was working on the stone bridges, remorting those. buying the Chateau Theater for the city of Rochester, renovating that with a new roofing project and asset preservation, doing some historical reviews both on Soldiers Field Park and Silver Lake Parks. These are things that I've done, I've had this passion for and been part of with our community. Along with that then is obviously the Plummer House, which is why we're here tonight. Looking at the maintenance activities that we go on there as a daily basis for our park, the building and the grounds. Looking at the heating and ventilation process that we did here a few years back in 2000, and I think it was 13 or 12, we started it actually. So very early on in my career at Park and Rec. Looking at facility planning for the entire Plummer House grounds, my planning background saying we got to do better and plan for the future with that. Then lastly, the water tower project. These are all big projects we've had for Plummer House that I didn't do alone. We've had a great partnership with a lot of different people. And my real purpose of being up here is to talk about 4 people in particular. So one is Les and Sandy, that's kind of grouped as one. They are great caretakers for our facility, do a great job on the eyes and ears to the ground of what the Plummer House is on a daily basis. They coordinate the volunteers that are out there. They help us with our projects that we have out there, kind of showing us what needs to be done on a periodic basis from a maintenance standpoint. And just overall, just great people. So I want to thank those 2 personally. The next 2, or 2 and 3, are not quite in the very back, but Steve and Jane. And I think when I started Park and Rec in 2011, I heard this knock at my door probably pretty early on, and Steve and Jane were there saying, "Hey, you know about these important projects, Chateau and Plummer House?" And I'm kind of thinking, "Yeah, great buildings. What about them?" And they started instilling me that passion for the historical properties that we have. And I think over time, they're volunteers and they're pushing me along, prodding me along about what we need to do out here and make an effort towards that has been wonderful for me. And I really appreciate their efforts. Their efforts are not without merit. I mean, we've gotten 4 grants of different varying sizes, which is equal project size total in dollar amounts of about $1.3 million, not grants, but total project costs. So again, significant contributions by them. I'm sure there's a lot of people behind them as well, but those 2 are the face that I deal with on a lot of times. So I want to thank them personally as well. I mentioned the volunteers already, but that kind of goes along with Sandy and everybody else in the operation side of things. But the last person is actually Bill Hickey, who's you're going to hear from tonight. Bill's been around me as well since about 2012 in our heating and ventilation project. And he has provided me guidance, provided me expertise, that knowledge that I don't have going into this as not an architect, but knowing as an owner operator, we got to do better on what we've done in the past. He's not admonished me for things I've done wrong, like concrete by the stairs and the stone. It's a bad thing, using modern concrete with old stone. Didn't quite work out very well. But he said, here's how we correct those, and put together plans with us, working together with us and Steve and Jane. How do we do better going longer term in the future? Lay out a program for us. And how can we do that? Now, the funding is a part of that program, but really it's that planning document that helps provide that guidance to us going long term. So with that, I want to thank Bill as well. So Bill, floor is yours.
Thank you for the kind words, Mike, and thank you, Wayne, also for the introduction. And I second all the thank yous to Les and Steve and Jane and everyone. We wanted to give you sort of a sneak peek at the tower restoration that is very evident right now with the scaffolding up and is coming near conclusion. It's probably about another month yet to finish. But we wanted to sort of walk you through the process and explain both what we're doing and why we're doing it. So I lost my screen. You'll see in a moment, but one of the interesting things about the tower, it was done concurrent with the house design and drawings. And oh, sorry. Okay. Getting there.
Apologies.
There we go. It was done as a sub project within the house project. It was done on, issued in April of 1918. So it was always part of the work. It was done during the work, but it was not done afterwards, as some infrastructure sometimes is. This is a view of the Quarry Hill campus estate not long after construction, and you can see the trees have not come in yet.
Bill, just let me know when you want me to.
Oh, okay. One of the things you'll notice in this photo and the others is especially evident without the trees greened up, is how exposed that tower is, and how much of it is exposed. The other thing that always strikes me here is when you're standing on that tower, that hill seems a lot higher. And even just driving by tonight, I'd swear that the hill has grown, but perhaps it's just the trees. So here's another view. You can see the trees are starting to come in. The house is beginning to be sheltered, but that tower is still exposed. And this is where the restoration story really starts, is some of this. One of the wonderful features of the original building was a pinnacle or spire at the top. That was purely decorative. There was a vent there, but it did not need so elaborate housing. That was done for architectural reasons, for aesthetic reasons, and really a graceful sort of pinnacle to the top. But you notice this is an enlargement of the previous slide. That pinnacle is starting to shift. We don't think it lasted very long. It was just carpentry, just wood, and between the wind and everything else, we believe it came down relatively early. Okay. So just did a little detour through how we worked. Next. I mentioned the drawings, the original drawing. This is the drawing. Nowadays, if in my office, if we were doing a new water tower, 20, 30 sheets of drawings, this was done on one sheet of drawing. That's both good and bad, but what it most evocatively speaks to is the assumption of the level of craft that was going to be received. There was not a feeling they had to detail everything because the people building understood what to do. One thing that we were struck by initially is the whole top of the tower is wood. It's the tank room and pinnacle were wood. The rest is mostly masonry and concrete. The word or the label 2x4 shows up 3 times on this drawing. That's the only mention of wood here. It was just assumed your carpenters would know what to do. There's no calculations for rafters. There's no tie down details or anything like that. But oh boy, are there elaborate concrete reinforcing drawings. And we were really struck by that. The first thought was, well, Dr. Plummer just liked the technology. But what very discreetly written there is information about the tank. 3,760 gallons, 32,000 pounds. If you can imagine, and up in the air, subject to wind. So doing a thorough job on the reinforcement was not a exercise for Dr. Plummer. That was a very strong necessity to deal with the forces at play here. Next. So we had a good base to build from. The brevity of the drawings that I mentioned, with not having endless details and things, meant that we had to explore, figure out what was built, how it was built, and there we go. and how to fix it. Many things we weren't able to really assess till we got the scaffolding up. We did fly with a drone and do a lot of photography, but as you know, of course, that's photography. The other challenge was the original staircase, spiral staircase inside had been removed very early on for security reasons. People were drawn to the tower back then as now, so it was a trespass hazard. So the contractors reestablished. Um, 60s or 70s. We don't have an exact name. When for sure when it was discontinued, the use of the tower was discontinued. So eventually there are plans to rebuild that stair, but for now we're working on staging platforms inside the tower. A lot of investigation is just literally laying your hands on it, finding out how things are holding up after 100 years. Some things are evident. The stone walls on the slope of the hill, we could walk up to, we could touch. This particular one on the low side leans a bit, and you know, from an architectural perspective, that draws your attention. But my structural engineer partner was very comfortable. You know, it leans, but it's not moving. And you definitely don't want to hear your structural engineer say something is moving. They work on keeping things still. So next. For purposes as we talk through here, we identified tank room, tower, tool room, and west staircase as the major portions. So for reference, when I'm saying tank room or things, those are the portions we're talking about. I will say one of the invaluable tools, in spite of all my research, all the work we did drawing, photos of things before we took them apart. Contractor has envelopes of those photos that they live by, and it's a wonderful way to know how to put something back together the way it was. Again. There were adventures that you might expect in a building 100 years old. The pigeons had made themselves well at home and left much for us to clean up. Some of that led to ends of boards rotting off where they're exposed to troubles like that. But that was not out of line with what we would expect in a 100-year-old building that had not been inhabited, so to speak. The birds will move in. Would you go back one? There we go. When you walked up to the tower, you know, it seemed literally rock solid. And by and large, that's true. As they say, you know, the walls are not moving. It's in solid shape. But it is 100 years old, and no building, no matter how carefully put together, goes 100 years without needing some work. And some of that work that we'll show you is that of that nature. The stone, for instance, there were some places with cracking and things like that. There's no displacement. There's a crack, but the stone hadn't moved out of place. So what that led us to understand was we had some water coming in where wood met stone. The building was not built in the era of modern flashings and waterproofings and things. It was well built, but 100 years these things happen. More concerning, there are isolated instances where the limestone has fractured, The common limestone that's close to the surface that everyone in Minnesota has used is a little prone to that. It's not a structural concern right now. It's more of an aesthetic concern. They're isolated stones that just need replacing. And again, that's normal for 100 years. Next. You can see this is a case right by the tool room door where water acting on the wood, puddling on top of the stone, just decayed the base of the wall. Again, that's an effect of 100 years of water, not bad construction. It was just time for these things to be fixed. Back to that idea of exposure. This is a view of one of the balconies up at the tool room facing south. 100 years of pure solar exposure is just brutal on wood. You can see the wood fibers were actually separating. This was not the pieces coming apart. It was the wood fibers themselves just turning to fuzz. And as a result, you can see, and we'll see in some more, that was not a safe condition anymore. Things are starting to move up there because the bases were gone, the structural capacity of the wood was gone. So fortunately, this is from a drone, and I didn't have to climb up to this. You know, these sort of signature balconies were definitely in need of repair, replacement. Mike mentioned the Secretary of Interior standards. One of the challenges the building presents, and one of the balances we always had to strike was in normal restoration, if it's old, it stays. We use epoxy to fix things like that. Where there's a structural need, those normal fixes for appearance sake don't work. So we ended up having to do some replacement of some members here for basically for life safety reasons. We could have saved part of the post, but we could never attach it enough to hold someone on the balcony. And as we were saying one day, you know, where there's a balcony, sooner or later there's going to be someone out on it. And so we did some work with that. Up on the back one. Up on the tank room, the big concern was the roof. We knew we had issues there. We would find shingles on the ground, things like that. The difficulty was its location, not only at the top of a tower, but on that hill slope. So the north side, old, little mossy, but sort of intact, looked okay. The little dormers were pretty intact. But that's the side we could see most readily from the ground, from the grounds of the estate. Next. The difficulty was as we come around to the south side, this is that full sun exposure for 100 years, and it just you could track the line of exposure by where these things fell off. What that did, you know, there's places where it would leak regardless, but what happened when the exposed decking now is your weather surface, some of that carpenter's freedom that I talked about early on comes back to haunt you. The cone of the tower, the main roof, was built as we would today with decking or planks running in a vertical manner. When they got down to the eave, they changed the direction and went in sort of a skirting direction, even to the point where the roof trusses are discontinuous and the eave trusses are just outriggers, basically. Understandable from a carpentry standpoint. They weren't directed to do otherwise. Makes perfect sense. Seemed to work for 100 years or so. But next. What would happen, you can see, by the way, all the nails left from the shingles. They tried to hold them on, but only so much. And this is a view inside that attic. Even in spite of the daylight, the decking actually sheds weather pretty well. But unfortunately, what it would do is water collecting here runs down to this change in board, even where it's not fully exposed, where the shingles were thin, it would come down and dive in to the assembly at that point. And that's where our main troubles began up on the tool room there. Because where that point is on top of the wall allowed water and debris inside the wall assembly. You couldn't build a better scoop, basically. And so water and debris would get in there, be subject to frost action, decay, generally bring in some animals, all kinds of fun. And you can see it was in some places a 6-inch gap or more. So it's not just a little rain going in, it's full on snow and such. And again, this is on that south side where it's most exposed, where no one can see it. You have to be over at the mall to get a view of the tower, and it's too far to know. What that started to do, though, is push behind all the stucco on the top. Next. I mentioned some of the debris coming down, leaves for many years, squirrels leaving things. All of that is not only holding moisture and causing rot, but also that freeze thaw and pushing out on the wall assembly. Next. And you can see how it stressed everything, even something that wasn't decayed. The pressure was just too much, so it was starting to come apart. Next. So I will say, as we built back, we are very pleased with the level of craft that we've gotten from our contractor, North Valley, up there. Very, very high level of workmanship. But there is nothing that hurts a contractor or a carpenter, a good carpenter, more than telling them they have to leave the old rotten wood in place. Because every instinct says take it out. So you can see we would sister up different structural elements to restore a structure. This is the conical roof coming down to the skirt, so to speak, and many of the rafters were rotted off and had to be sistered. But we left the historic work in place, took out any active rot, but kept the structural integrity by putting in new work. Next. And you can see it's not something you can just do. It's all fuss work, 80 feet in the air on scaffold in the winter, hoping you don't drop your hammer and trying to make all this work. So really a high level of tailoring has gone on, and just individual fixes here and there just to make this all come back together. Again, you can see the sistering, you can see cut the rotten end off, keep the intact historic, but provide the structure back with modern wood. Next. One of the other challenges we have is modern codes don't like historic preservation generally. So there's been a lot of horse trading back and forth with the code officials to make sure that we're meeting life safety, but also respecting the historic standards that we need to. An example of that is several of the brackets on the dormers had to be replaced. The original ones had just been toenailed in with about 6 or 8 nails per side, which worked, but no longer comes close to code. Because we had to replace that piece of wood for structural reasons, now we had to add modern compliance into that. So they have a steel plate, sort of a T-shaped plate that comes off the building and that this bolts in, and then we plug the holes with epoxy, paint over it. It's invisible. It looks like it was historically, but now has the structural oomph that we need. Next. One of the other challenges we had was, if you recall, on the tower under the tank room was a series of brackets or corbelled sort of decorative elements. There was one left. They had fallen out over the years. The reason being they were built well, placed in the stone wall as the masons worked, and then built around and went on. There was never any actual attachment. They were more or less friction fit, which again was entirely normal for the time. Was not a bad detail, but we needed to do a little better on that. Those were actually removed by our contractors, or the remaining one was removed as a pattern. And this is a view of it in the shop. You can see it was built up out of boards. It was not itself, carved from wood or anything. It was laminated up. And so that was fortunate because that gives us the ability to do the same and replace the text. So going from old to new, we obviously have the benefit of not being weathered. And then the epoxy paint we use cover it, makes it look intact and single piece again as the historic ones did. You can see on this one, this is the back where it had just rotted off from moisture. So there were a few things we looked at and patched. The carefree days of old ladders were not a high concern. So there are ladders and historic gear left in place that is not intended to ever be used. It's purely aesthetic now. So next. Another sort of element of carefree days past is when you have a condition like this where you've got 3 surfaces coming together, one of them's curved, they're 2 different materials, stone and wood. The best way to flash that is to drape a big old sheet of copper coated lead over it. It's easy to work with, seals up nicely, and worked really well. And actually, for your peace of mind, lead flashing is pretty stable environmentally speaking, unless it's exposed to acid or things like that. But you can't just go buy a new sheet of lead. And so we had to work to salvage all of this really and reuse. And it's still workable after 100 years. It's marvelous stuff, except it's lead. So next. You can see it's cleaned up a little bit, but it's gone back in place. Where we have modern flashing coming in order to prevent galvanic action, in other words, make a battery up there by accident, you have to keep the metals separate. So there's actually neoprene under modern metal. The water dripping from one to the other is not a problem. It's just if the metals themselves touch. So there's again a high level of craft. What seems like a fussy thing, but is essential for keeping that flashing intact. Next. Down at the base of the tool room, this is where I showed you the cracked stone early on. We're able to save most of the wall, but where the bottom decayed, you can see where we've patched in a little bit of trim. We're doing some stucco work and backing. Here again, we've slipped in a little bit of flashing to maybe extend the next 100 years to 200 and see how that goes. So next. One of the interesting things, and this to me, this was a telltale that Dr. Plummer was involved. This building has storm windows on it. It was never heated, never could have been heated, but the windows are operable, and there's storm windows there. The metal connections are handmade and very elegantly done. The windows can be put on basically with one allow some pretty easy maintenance. We've reestablished, repaired the
batteries died.
we've reestablished those windows. We've repaired those that needed. There were a couple broken from what we assume are pigeon impacts, things like that. I don't expect Mike is going to have staff up there putting the storm windows on or off, but they are back in place, so it is intact. So, say again. Oh, back to the glass is original. The window sashes are original. This is been reputtied, but is essentially a new, or excuse me, an existing historic window. These have new storms on them. Some of them were missing, and we recreated some. This is down on the tool room. This is up on the tower itself. So it was a mix. Things were pretty well in place, but there was odds and ends of decay and things. So now so this is what's left. I started out talking about that pinnacle. I'm still in love with that pinnacle. The new roof, or the repaired roof, has been engineered to accept this, to hold it in place and keep it in place for 100 years. It was outside of our ability to fund it this time, but it's waiting in the wings. So my ambition for the Plummer Tower is to finish that tower. It's a gorgeous pinnacle. It reminds me of the old one on Notre Dame. And it would be a nice way to finish it. So with that, next. That's my show for the evening. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. It would be wood. It would be a treated wood, preservative treated wood. Because the original is gone, we don't have a preservation issue there, but we do have a need to keep it light. We did explore aluminum and such, and between lightning and weight, the wood turns out to still be the best option. Yes, sir.
Could you talk some more about the tank, what it was made of, what condition it's in now?
It's steel, it is insulated. It was holding water when it was drained, when the house switched to city water. I don't think anyone has tested it since then, and I don't believe there's a need or an intention to. But it's not obviously suffering from any decay or anything. It's been pretty well sheltered. Yes,
How deep is the well and how far down do the footings go that hold this tower in the ground?
the footings go to bedrock, so it's on the slope. And it's not equal. We did a little bit of exploration. They're just different depths on all sides. About 6 feet down on the low part of the hill, and up on top, they're closer to a 4 foot depth. I don't actually know the depth of the well.
And how long was the tank used?
Till the 70s, Mike, was it? It was.
We made connections, it sounds like in the 70s, I think,
Yeah.
or late 60s, I can't remember exactly which.
Well, Les, you might know. When was the city water connected?
I don't, but it had to been.
Is that- Okay, thank you. Other questions? Actually. We usually say 80 feet, not counting the pinnacle. It's a little bit squishy because it being on the slope, it depends where you measure from. But when you're up on that top level looking over the edge, it's definitely 80 feet.
Very windy, by the way.
Yes. 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 We booked, Jane. Ashley? Very definitely coordinated with the house. I think there was sort of a romantic, picturesque sort of movement at the time that the house took some inspiration from. I think some of the Plummer heritage is shown. This is me speculating. To be honest, this sounds like an insult, but this is the highest compliment I can give. It reminds me of the Maxfield Parish building. If the painter, you know, the fairy tale sort of castle on a hill. Very, very picturesque, very, very interesting. Yes, sir.
The stones, how do you find a match?
Trial and error. Once we sort for size and things like that, we swap pieces. Just it takes a good mason to just find about the right color match and things like that. Even some of the fractured ones I showed you are not a structural concern yet. What happens though is as rock fractures, it starts to accept more water, and so it speeds up the process, and sooner or later some of those will need to be replaced. Yes, ma'am.
Some years ago, there was a house for sale down on, I think it was 9th Street, and it was advertised as the Plummer House's pump house. I was wondering how that was associated with the water tower?
That was the well house, and again, Jane, maybe I should defer to you, but the water was pumped from there up.
From that up to
Yes.
the water tower?
Yes,
The other question I had was, what would you need to have a balcony off the top of that thing for?
you absolutely don't. And that's where the idea of the romantic sort of silhouette comes in. You know, it's a Rapunzel balcony. And it's architectural ornament, fully functional, solid doors, you know, easy to step in and out of when we're done. But from a water perspective, no need.
Shake your dust mop off.
Shake your dust mop up, chase the pigeons away.
I don't know if Henry was a thrill seeker, but, having been out on those porches, it's pretty neat up there. You can see for miles and miles, and I assume there wasn't any reason for them other than to look out over the countryside.
Right. Jane. Oh. Oh, very possible. Yeah.
When the restoration is done, is it gonna be open to the public someday, or what's the goal, or what's the plan future?
Would you repeat the question?
Or what the goal is for the future is gonna be open to the public?
So ideally, had we had enough money, it'd be fully restored. In the process of this bidding project and the construction challenge we had, the bids were well over budget. We scaled back the project from being a full restoration to an asset preservation. And get that through the granting process, and they acknowledge that challenge we have. So the answer is, in short, no, we're not going to be open to the public. We may have some special tours periodically, but really you can't go inside and go up the tower if there's no stairs to go up there. So unfortunately.
Was at the point where it needed to be restored or taken down or something for safety reasons? I assume, but maybe you can. I don't know.
It was needed to be restored for a long time before I came on the park. So that's the reality. Unfortunately, you know, the city balances funding with priorities all the time, and this never ranked very high in that process. Luckily, again, through passion of others to help guide us in that process, we were secured some federal grant dollars. Again, as a city team, we pursued that. Again, support from the city administrators as well, and got that funding, and we're at this point right now. Again, looking forward to the future for more restoration.
How much do you figure it would cost the city for restoration?
I don't know, but yeah.
The pinnacle, when we estimated that work, came in about 70,000. There's stairway needed, there's stonework that should be done coming up. It's difficult to give you an answer because it's a moving target. As time goes, more things are needed. But costs are also a little bit difficult to generalize right now. You know, not counting the pinnacle, there's probably, you know, 250,000. Please don't quote me on this, but in terms of magnitude, what is being done now are absolute priorities and essential. The roof, the tank room restoration, all the difficult to get at stuff. So there's not a majority of the work left, but it's not insubstantial either.
Thus far, we're just over $1 million. So again, not inconsequential. We had a federal grant of roughly $385,000. We matched it with city dollars. We found out again through construction, additional work was necessary. We added more funding to that for that very purpose, and we're now pushing that $1 million mark. And again, Bill had his number. I was thinking about $500,000 for the rest of the water tower area. Again, there's more restoration throughout the entire complex to be done too. So we're talking multiple $1 million of projects.
What is your final rate? Outside of the water tower? The next big
Steve and Jane will push me to do something different. That's the next plan. In all seriousness, right now, we've got a long-term plan. The referendum for park funding came forward here a couple of years back. We're going through a lot of asset preservation on that. We've got plans for basically through 2030 of that spending right now. Post 2030, we'll look at what other things we can do. The water tower or the Plummer House will be on that list again. We got plans for some levy dollars, I think in the 2028 or 9 right now, tentatively as a whole place. But again, more future dollars to go towards that. And again, what's the next step? We'll go to that facility plan that was developed here in 2018 and kind of review that again and say, is this still the current priorities we have to go for? We know right now we have a roof on the garage that needs to be redone. Our first estimate we just got here last week was about $80,000 just for the roof. So again, we're scoping that out, seeing what we should be doing to preserve that or to enhance that differently. Maybe our staff will do part of the work. We don't know yet. So it's expensive, no question about it.
Excellent.
From Zoom, Bev asked or said, so much work done. Congratulations on accomplishments to date. When will the restoration work be completed, or is this unknown given funding, structural challenges of the tower?
The current project should wrap up in a month or so. As Mike says, there's other projects and other work on the estate, on the campus that need to be done, but the water tower asset preservation restoration is about a month.
Is the current work being done by a local contractor?
Yes, it's North Valley.
Spring Valley, I think is where they're out of, so relatively local. And again, we're talking about a special skill set that not every contractor has either. So they've done actually multiple historic preservation projects, not for us, but for across the state.
Yeah.
They did the smokehouse here, the Stoffel Smokehouse.
Oh, they did.
Okay.
Very good. Yeah. Great firm.
So Mike, with the celebration or the 100th anniversary celebration, and people have asked us all the time and for years, is there any effort now to have the house open more than just one day a week for tours? Or,
You know, there's not been a big push for that I've seen or heard. You know, maybe Les and Sandy hear that more often than I would, and they share that the conversation with me about, you know, that struggle with volunteerism and how we operate the house. That's a struggle we have across our park system. How do we manage and maintain and operate various activities when people want more and more and more? That's a great thing. They like our parks and like our facilities, but how do you provide that with still maintaining our budgets that we got? So that's part of the challenge.
it would be like giving tours at Mailwood and people would ask, you
Yep.
know, and you say, oh, it's Wednesday, you can go.
Right.
And, or it's Thursday, you know, you missed out, and they'd always want to know, how come they only have it open one day a week?
Anticipation, just tell them that. It's that building up for that Wednesday.
We're starting, starting about halfway through this month. We're booked about 20 or 25 days a month, June, July, and August. Wow. It turns down in September, but it's still busy, at least 15 or so days a month. So, and then we don't know what day we could have it on. If we can make $1,000, I think the city would like that more than
Probably, yeah.
10,000.
Yes.
One suggestion would be opinion of the former building for many years had a ugly gantry that originally built it speaking like with an airport. The airport was built up along with years. About 15 years ago. No. Thanks.
Please.
We'll always take donations. So.
Other questions? Thank you all.